Welcome back to the Screen Love Affair podcast. Today, I'm Sam Rockwell from my latest movie, Good Luck, Have Fun, Don't Die. What a great, easy title to say over and over again and type out when talking about it. That is sarcasm. What isn't sarcasm is I don't think I like this movie as much as the internet leads me to believe, and I'm excited to find out if you guys feel the same way in today's episode.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say I feel gaslit. I'll start off by saying, like, I love Sam Rockwell. I'm like adore Sam Rockwell. He is on a very cold run post Oscars. I looked at his filmography, and I think there was like maybe one or two things that I've liked since, and then a bunch of animated stuff in there too, which is more just voice work, but. I was really excited. Like, Gore Verbinski directed this movie. Probably most people have seen Gore Verbinski movies are the original trilogy of the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, which I still love all three of those. And so I was kind of excited for that and like kind of a return in the director's chair for him, paired with my boy Sam Rockwell. So I was super keen. And then this movie sort of like phantom dropped. I knew that it was out there, but I had no idea it was releasing until I went to look at my kind of make my Friday schedule to go see movies. And there it was. So I went in with what I would say were not even high hopes, but like just generally, I was kind of ready to have a good time and enjoy Sam Rockwell. And almost in the opening 5 to 10 minutes, and I'm not a guy that leaves movies, I'm not a guy that quits on movies. Within 5 to 10 minutes, there was sort of like a base instinct in me that was just like, walk out, leave. And in my brain, I'm like, why do I feel that way? And the movie kind of bore out for me that way. Not that I would ever encourage a walkout because you never know. And it's like if you've committed the time, you might as well stick it through. But yeah, I did not like this pretty much at all. I firmly put this in the heartometer on the hate scale for me. I just like I hated Sam Rockwell was fine. I put in my Letterboxd review that he was innocent, but barely. He was doing the Sam Rockwell, I'm zany dancy guy, talk quick and not even that smoothly kind of energy that can work for me and that didn't super really work for me. The first thing I saw about this movie, someone described it as a old man yells at clouds, and I was like, oh, whatever. Like, I was kind of unsympathetic to that going in, and then pretty much from the moment this started, I was like, oh fuck, I see what that person meant. And there's a lot of other layers that we'll get into in the spoiler bit, but yeah, I just have to say, like, again, I want to be like, yeah, for original movies and smaller movies and all this kind of thing. But to call this original, I think is a leap. Like, sure, it's not IP driven, but there's basically nothing original about this other than some, I guess, quirky, weird things, if that's your idea of originality. But I just like, I described this to Adriana, and this will be my closer bit because I'm getting on a Brandon in Crime 101 level rant right now, but I knew I would be like this for this movie. I described this as a children's movie for adults. And what I mean by that is structurally, this plays out like every children's movie I watched as a kid, to the point where like there's things where it builds and then there's this weird CGI heavy climax. And like it structurally is a children's movie, but it also tackles themes related to school shooters. So not for kids, lots of F-bombs. The audience of this is kind of mystifying to me. The only solace I'm taking in all this positive online criticism that I'm reading about the movie is that nobody's seen it. I think it made like $3 million this weekend, so a very specific niche of people are seeing it. I would say if you see this and you're intrigued by it, don't temper your expectations a bit because maybe you can like this more than I did, but certainly an 85% in like critic audience, there's almost parity right now, is baffling to me. I feel like I watched a completely different movie than everybody else did, and I'll stop there for now.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, I think you summarized a lot of things pretty well. My kind of quick summary is like this kind of like Weapons feels like a movie where I feel like I watched a different movie than everyone else because they like people seem to love this even on Letterboxd where I generally tend to
Mhm.
people tend to be a bit more like critical or discerning. Maybe that's not true anymore, but people seem to love it and I'm so baffled because yeah, the kids movie analogy is apt because to me it felt very just like juvenile in a lot of ways,
Mhm.
and there's maybe some ideas in here that I think are like maybe sympathetic or like could have been good, but it was just written in like the worst, most surface level, like heavy-handed way possible. Um Yeah, I did not have a fun time with this movie that should have been very fun. Maybe got a few chuckles out of me. Some of the performances were pretty good, but it was rough going.
Funniest part of our screening was the guy behind us that was snoring, and then when he was confronted again, another person fell asleep in the movie, loudly snoring, and the person behind them was like, "Hey man, like cut out the snoring," and the dude denied it, which was the funniest part of the whole screening for me was he just outright denied that he was snoring. But sorry, Brandon, please go.
Oh, no, well, like, everything you both just said, which was funny to me, it was both like, "Who is this for? Like, who's liking this movie?" Some boomer fell asleep in my screening. It's a boomer Facebook movie, guys. It's a movie that will have legs when it's clipified, so boomers share it, being like, "Isn't this the problem with youth?" Again, old man yells at cloud. It's like I really do think like this does have that like hip with the youth vibe where they're like, how do we touch on youth culture and what's going on in today's society, and then it just ultimately falls flat for I think a lot of people. But again, like I'm mystified as to why people think this is phenomenal. I should mention off the rip because I feel like people like us would have tuned out from being like, "Oh, good luck, have fun, don't die." I don't care. We're going to be talking about Wuthering Heights and the Iron Lung movie. And I think both of those are better than this. I know it's Iron Lung, not the Iron Lung Relax, but I would say that yeah, this movie was a bit of a slog to get through. And unlike you guys, I would say I was actually pretty bought in for the majority of the movie. I'd say almost the
Okay.
first two acts. I felt this was at best a great Black Mirror episode if they just trimmed the fat and made it like a 45-minute episode of TV. It felt like at best it was like a contemporary version of Idiocracy. And at its worst, it's kind of what it stuck to, which is its initial concept of like a Terminator vibe, a Terminator Groundhog Day kind of vibe. And they reference that in the movie. To summarize the plot super quick, Sam Rockwell comes back in time in a diner and he co ops a bunch of strangers in a diner to join him on overthrowing some sort of future revolution, some sort of Skynet esque thing. It's hinted at, and when they eventually explain it, definitely where it lost me. But for the most part, yeah, it's like, yeah, I was going to do that bit for the opening. It's like, we've recorded this 136 times, and only one of them do you both agree to join me to discuss this latest movie. But I was like, I actually didn't care to parody the movie that hard. I thought this was enough parody it deserved. So ultimately, yeah,
I'd
I think,
argue
yeah,
more than it deserved.
more than it deserved. Exactly. Honestly, and like the no shot at the costume department, they did their best, but like it's a cool look, and the
Did
poster I
they?
thought was pretty intaking. But I think I could have recreated it 1-to-1 if I had more than 15 minutes to put on a trash bag, a weighted vest, and a jacket. Like,
That's kind of
yeah,
where I
it felt
was. It was
like
very much like, oh, I'm a
budget.
student budget. How do I make this guy from the future? Well, he's got a clear jacket and some wires. Like, I'm like, what the
Yeah.
fuck? Like,
My
yeah.
initial take on this was this is the greatest student film I've ever sat through because it evoked a student film where it's like, here's a great premise, but we don't have the time, budget, or skill to nail it. You know what I mean? Like there
Wait,
were parts of
hold
the
on,
premise that I
Brandon. We
liked.
haven't
Yeah.
gotten to Iron Lung yet.
Yeah.
Oh, oh, Adriana
Anyway,
from the top
sorry.
rope. That was good. That
Yeah,
was really good.
let's everyone. I say this is the guy freaking out the most. Calm down. We'll have plenty of time to talk about everything else. But I have to say because I read the Black Mirror comparisons, I think that's actually so misaligned. Like just because it's about technology, people are like, ah, it's like Black Mirror.
Well, so That I don't think it's just because it's about technology. I think it's what people are hitting on are the little vignettes, like the flashbacks where it's like there's this weird surreal thing going on with like the teenagers and their phones and or the
cloning.
school shooting store, the clones.
Well, but even that I think's like a super hollow, because to me the thing about that is like how they exemplify like the best episodes of Black Mirror to me are what like draw out like the human component of these.
Yes.
And this movie does none of that like whatsoever. It's very much just like AI and like we're all glued to our phones and technology's bad and da 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 da. Like messaging that I'm on board for,
Yeah.
but then it does like absolutely nothing to dive into that even like minorly, like tiny little bit. Like there's nothing about that whatsoever, and the only characterization they can create for like the counter to that
my
is someone
God.
that's allergic to shit. And I was like, what the fuck? Like I
Yeah.
just like
He's like the brother from
it
Better Call
annoyed me
Saul.
so much. Yeah, well,
Yeah.
exactly. Like, yeah, Chuck McGill, except again, where that dives into the mental component and the psyche of humans and all of this kind of thing. This is not interested in the human component of the story at all.
I saw one review that I think was pretty like hit the nail on the head. That was like, it's kind of ironic that this movie is like anti-AI slop, but it feels like worse
Like
than
AI
AI
slop.
slop. And
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, that's kind of it.
That was 100% kind of, I think, my takeaway, because I was willing to buy in and enjoy, I'd say, like at least half the movie. But then as they try to explain it and tie it together, I'd just say for now, spoiler warning to anybody that really cares. You know our general thoughts, but this is like the mountain I'm making of a molehill, maybe. But yeah, I think the issue with trying to critique and lampoon like AI slop with a movie where regardless if it's humans, like an art department making AI slop graphics, AI slop looking CGI, by evoking the AI slop that we're so familiar with now, it runs the risk of feeling like AI slop itself, you know? And I wouldn't be surprised if that was like the gag, that they're like, we made this anti-AI slop using AI. That's why it sucked. But no one's saying that. Everyone's like, oh, what a great movie. I sure do hate AI slop. And a great example is like when you see like one of the big bad threats in the movie is like a cat meme personified as like a giant kaiju. And my girlfriend thought that was awesome. And I was like, I get it. I know they're trying to lampoon like meme slop. And when you do see the kids doom scrolling, it looks like AI slop. But man, yeah, they ran the risk of flying too close to parodying it, that it just felt like AI slop. And, when there's like the chosen one child that's in his like mystical basement with like all the servers and like the big thing, it felt so unearned and so generically weird that I was like, nobody thought about this. This wasn't tied into anything. And it felt anything a little bit more like Akira, the way it was like this psycho tech child controlling these toys and stuff. Like it just like kind of like Weapons, our early review before I rewatched it and grew to love it, because I'm a sheep and I just like fall in line eventually, was I felt like there's too much going on inside of it, and it didn't like click for me at all. But unlike Weapons, I don't think I'm going to rewatch this with reverence and be like, oh, there it is. Because like I think it was all there. Like unlike Crime 101, a film full of rich themes and subtext, this movie is just like, it isn't that bad. Don't you also hate this? Kids these days, am I right? And yeah, I got kind of sick of it. And again, at its best, it was an Idiocracy parody. At its worst, it was like, here's a Terminator thing. And like when they do the whole Sarah Connor reveal that, the manic pixie dream girl was his mom, I clocked that immediately. Like when they didn't show his mom's face in that flashback, I was like,
Even
I bet that's the
earlier,
manic pixie dream girl. Yeah.
when he's
Yeah.
like, I always like when he shows the drawing of the sun and he's like, my mom always told me about sunsets or whatever, sunrises. I was like, okay, she's the mom. Like,
Yeah.
great. To me, the absolute worst sin a movie can commit is treating its audience like fucking morons, and this movie commits that so frequently and so often that it just pissed me off. Like that's one example. Like I don't know. There's so much where it's just
when you said that too, it like what I couldn't like. I think when I started buying out of the movie, like trying to sell it like a short stock, where I was like, cash out now, it's going to get worse. The premise and like the game showy, good luck, have fun, don't die. When they start introducing the VR escapism element, like everyone lives in Ready Player One, and the machines rule the world and all that, I was like, huh. And then they say the line, you're going to have the greatest life. It's going to be full of epic journeys with unique characters and plot twists. And it was like, oh, like the fucking movie we were watching. I was so expecting it to be like, turns out the main guy is an unreliable narrator and he is the child, puts on the VR headset, and this is his story. And it never really confirms or denies it, but like I was already getting mad watching it, being like, it's just going to be all a dream or all a VR fantasy the whole time after they try to get us to buy into Michael Pena and his coworker romance and all this stuff. Honestly, like I really felt like of like the 5 movies we all saw in this last week, this one wasted my time the most. And I think I was more excited for this to be like an indie darling or like a hidden gem. So maybe it's my expectation, but yeah, I was buying out actively, feeling them tying these threads of like, you can't trust, Sam Rockwell, the unreliable narrator. And then it turns out he is reliable, and, he's the chosen one. He's the John Connor going back for his mom in time. And I was just like, oh, the trope was not worth the payoff. But again, in the earlier latter half, when there's like, again, the school shootings are, and the advertisement thing where it's like that girl's like, I want a Pepsi, I need a Pepsi. And then they say like, you can get a government rebate or, subsidy if you allow ads. And they're like, no, it's really natural. You won't even notice it. I'm like, oh, that's cool. I like that. Again, this feels like a fun sci-fi world that they're building up to, but then they just stop caring and they're like, how do we wrap up the plot? And they put in ChatGPT, epic fight with cat head monster boy in synthetic room, toy robots like Toy Story. And I was like, okay, cool. Just checked out completely. So yeah.
I think that's where my gripes come in too with it, is that like it's not that you can't make an anti-AI movie and I'm not gonna like that. I'm very much, like I said, aligned to shitting on this and dunking. Like I wanted to be on this ride very much so. Even when I was kind of like eye rolling at the beginning and him throwing everyone's phones and he busts in and no one notices him because they're all glued on their phone. Like I'm like, okay, this is all like bottom of the barrel shit, but like whatever. I was hoping it would like, we're just getting everybody caught up on board, great, and then like escalating. But it felt like, back to this AI slop critique, it felt like they just threw a zillion ideas in here, and like people are trying to give this a lot of credit for like, oh, it's edgy and it's tackling school shootings and blah blah blah. I'm like, to what end? Like, this is a movie that has a lot of complaints but also says like nothing either interesting or challenging or like, compelling. Like this whole angle, like the nugget of that movie, the idea that, or should I say part of the movie, is that was interesting. Like I did think that was an interesting tie-in about these kids seem like ads because they are all created because of the school shoot. Like that whole world building angle of that was interesting to me. And I thought that like that was a thread that they could have really explored and honed in on. And it is totally irrelevant and inconsequential to the entire rest of the movie and to the main chunk of the movie itself. So I was like, you don't get credit for like pointing that out or adding it. It felt like there was like, again, all these ideas that they threw in that are just like relative, like, and again, not that it wasn't interesting. Like I thought that was kind of funny. Like I was into the dark comedy aspect of like, you can only put like 2 character traits in your kid when you recreate them. And then like, and none of it gelled together in a way that I thought worked either, because then there was also that weird inclusion of the voice box kid, which was in her ear for the whole movie. And like, again, that just struck me as odd because it was just yet another thing that like, was it fake? Was it real? Was it helpful? Was it malicious? Why was it there? It was irrelevant. It had nothing to do with it. And again, my last bit on this tangent is, last week we talked about Crime 101, and I said the ability of an incredible cast can elevate sort of your material a little bit. And this was a case where Sam Rockwell and Adrian, I know you like the girl that played his mom or whatever. I've seen her in a couple things.
Yeah.
But everybody else in this movie was like the fact, like if you could have gotten a stacked cast for this, maybe it would work a little better than it did. But the fact that it didn't just kind of like hollows out all these bits. And from a structure perspective, I thought it was more organic, better than Weapons, I would say, in the way that it utilized the kind of breaking up of the timelines and going back and showing the characters. I thought that was a better use of it, but it also only did it like for a couple beats, and then we kind of like move past
Yeah,
it and don't use it. So
not every character got a
Right.
flashback, and like it was, I don't know.
it
I
abandons
feel like
that idea too. So I was like, okay. So like
a
it
lot of
was
the cast just
yeah.
felt kind of wasted to me too. Like not the biggest
Like the
names,
Uber
but like
guy
Zazie
drives.
Beetz is like
Yeah.
in this and doesn't really get anything to do. Juno Temple like also is just playing this like one note character. Nothing really comes together, and it yeah.
Yeah, Michael Pena was far better in Ant-Man than he was in this, and same thing with the girl that plays Domino in Deadpool. Like, yeah, it's like when the MCU movie is a great reference of character acting compared to this, that's kind of a statement. But yeah, like, just like you said, like I feel like we're all aboard the hate train here, but like trying to think of positives, the movie was at its strongest when they had the dark humor with the commentary. So again, when you're talking about the clones of the school shooters, and when they're like, oh, don't put in clumsy, like they might get shot again. Great dark
Yeah.
humor. Even the boy at the end who is like revealed to be a clone that got the AI sentience to build itself. I was expecting a joke to be like, oh, they put in like totally random and that's how they got that, because they set that line up earlier. Like, what kind of trait is that to give a person? That doesn't come back. But I think, like, again, the strongest and darkest humor was always working when it worked in tandem with the kind of dystopic sense where you meet the one couple that like, oh, we're on our 4th school shooting victim clone child, so we just start putting in random character traits and we like bet on like when they're going to go next. It's over the top and funny, and I praise it for going there. But then when they just shy away from that to be a traditional Terminator movie and not like an idiocracy thing, I was like, this sucks. This is below Terminator Light and all the commentary and satire before. Like when you watch Idiocracy back, it's like, they watch a TV show called Ow My Nuts. Like, it's not supposed to be elevated and critiquing. It's on its sleeve a stupid movie that is critiquing because it's trying to be funny. And that is where that movie, I think, is great. And it's almost timeless now. The more you watch back Idiocracy from like 2005, the more poignant it feels. And I thought they were trying to do something here with that. And then it's like, no, they just go back into, again, like, what if smartphones were bad? And like, wow, this premise from like 2010 when people were still on Blackberries is so fresh and prevalent with nothing added to it. So yeah, I can't recommend this at all. I'm glad it's not doing well. I think like it needs to get out of theaters so there can be another screening of Wuthering Heights, where there's 4 playing at every Cineplex in Ontario right now. Because yeah, I didn't love it, and yeah, it's unfortunate because I think Sam Rockwell's great, but yeah, he said he's on a cold streak. He's not doing super hot. And even Michael Pena, he's got the opportunity to be hilarious in Ant-Man, but in this, it's like Latin school teacher, substitute teacher number 3. Like, what does he get? He gets this one note, as you said, Adrian. Like, it's sucky. And even the humor, like I said, it was best when it was dark and trying to make a comment. Even if it didn't always land, it was at least going for something kind of with teeth. And then it's like the humor kind of divulges into Sam Rockwell being like, yeah, and this happened in playthrough 86, so I know that guy falls off that ladder, or that guy gets hit by his own Chevy Malibu, and it's like, oh, okay, like,
Yeah, or like
he's from the future.
childish, like, oh, the big cat has a glitter penis. Like, whoa.
Yeah,
Like,
the
okay.
glitter penis. Yeah, they have the snowflake.
I think like the overwhelming feeling I had throughout this movie was secondhand embarrassment. And
yeah,
that's
for real.
like, I just felt embarrassed for everyone involved, and like to be like, not like you said, some of the ideas were kind of interesting. Some of the moments did land and make me laugh, but the majority of it did not. So it just, yeah, it was kind of a flop.
I will say, to try and be optimistic on Sam Rockwell a little bit, as I think he's in Martin McDonagh's next movie again, thank God, which is coming out later this November, if I remember correctly. So hopefully that will be a return to form, because yeah, it pained me. It pained me to see that, and I again went in like hopeful and like wanting to have a good time with this, and it just like yeah, once we left, that school shooting stuff to me was always the best of it. On all sides, it was when it was like kind of the most interesting. They were doing something more inventive, and then again the dark humor of that was really working too. And then it just abandons it to be this children's movie climax of a giant whipping tornado, and we got to plug the thing in, and not to mention all these logic gaps of we have 5 seconds, and then 2 minutes go by. Like, it was just crushingly stupid, and I just was kind of baffled. Like, I couldn't believe when I came out and all the praise that this movie was getting, and I thought it would be the worst thing I would see all day, and then I saw Iron Lung. I couldn't believe I didn't want to say it. I didn't jump down your throat when you were like, "Oh, Iron Lung was better." I could not. Like, Adriana turned and looked at me. I know we're aligned on this when she's like, I feel like I was too harsh on Good Luck, Have Fun, Don't Die after we sat through the excruciating 2 hours of Iron Lung. I'm not going to linger on this much on my end. I thought this was terrible. I thought the audacity to make this movie 2 hours long was offensive. And you want to talk about like an insult to your time. I think this was it. I found out after the fact. I knew nothing about Iron Lung, like the game or anything else. The game can be beat in 50 minutes to an hour, and this movie was 2 hours long. Baffling
More
decision
than 2
again.
hours. Like,
Baffling decision. And I will say it's a contained movie where you're with Markiplier on like a single set basically the entire movie. And when it opened, I started getting worried. I'm like, fuck, are we gonna be in this thing for the whole movie? And then they're like, we're bringing you up, we're surfacing, and I was just like, oh fuck, thank God. I was really worried we'd be in here for the whole 2 hours.
And then they're like, you're welded in there, like, we can't get you out.
You're not getting out, bro. And I'm like, oh, for fuck's sake.
Yeah.
It was unbelievably bad. What I will say is, aside from the fact it's terrible and sucks, I am glad it made its money. Good for that. I will always celebrate a theatrical win and an independent distribution win. I only wish the movie that was benefiting from these wins was even remotely enjoyable or good. There was nothing redeeming about this. Don't waste your time. If you want to give it free money, I guess give it free money. But like, genuinely, I see a lot of stuff. I take a lot of risks when I watch movies. I have not felt that I've wasted my time quite like I have with this movie. And Brandon, also one more shit before I toss it up and let you defend yourself. It made me feel bad about how upset I was about Shelby Oaks. This is infinitely worse than that movie. In every way. Like, again, there's nothing I can point to that
before we let Brandon counterpoint, I'll just add a bit more to the hate. I'll get my bit out of the way, because
I board the hate train.
Yeah, when you, Brandon, when you were saying how Good Luck, it was like kind of an insult to your time, I immediately was like, that's Iron Lung. Like, I felt like excruciatingly long. I don't know if you could tell how much I was fidgeting, Shay. Part of that was
that's why I gave you a reassuring touch that I'm like, I'm with you. It is okay. I patted your shoulder and just squeezed to let you know I was still with you and we're experiencing this together.
Part of it was like the physical like drain of seeing 4 movies in a row, but most of it, I think, was there was like nothing keeping my attention, and I fully checked out by the end of the movie. My mind was elsewhere. It just was so repetitive. There was not enough there to drag out to that length, and that to me felt insulting, like you said, Shay. I respect like independent filmmaking. I think it's cool that he tried something that he was passionate about, but ultimately I just like I could tell it was I could tell it was like a low budget YouTuber movie, and it's like kind of soured me. I didn't even watch Shelby Oaks, but it soured me on YouTubers turned filmmakers. I'm like, go stay in your lane, go back to YouTube. You're actively making the medium worse at this point. And on that note, one last thing. I don't know if this was just like a guild thing, or I don't fucking know, but when I saw written and directed by Markiplier, I don't know who Markiplier is. I don't have context. I don't watch his stuff on YouTube, but to use your handle, it just screamed like amateur to me. Like, if you're trying to move away from YouTube, trying to move into a different medium, trying to like step up your game, step your pussy up, like use your fucking real name. That just pissed me off. I was like, this is kind of embarrassing to me. Why would you stick your handle on it? Like, I know that's how people know him, but to me it just felt really, it just proved to me that this was like a YouTube project that was like dragged out and like thrown into cinemas for some reason. Like, why aren't we funding like better independent filmmaking is kind of my thought. Anyway, that's my rant for today.
All right. Okay. So, one, I'm not even a fan of Markiplier, if I'm being honest. I've never watched a Markiplier video front to back. But to combat what you said, why aren't we funding more? Because we are not. The studios are not. Markiplier funded this himself. So, like what Shay was saying, I think that's really important. That's the most important part of this movie is the behind the scenes of like, guy makes his own movie with his own money out of pocket. And to be fair, he's probably stupid rich from all his YouTuber money, but he makes his own movie and it does more money than a ton of other movies right now. It was 20 million in the opening weekend, better than Crime 101 that had an $80 million budget. So I think that's like the fascinating, best thing to like voice and think about in that context. What I would say is the best part for me, at least, is that the story of it is like peak eldritch horror. You know, like there's this ethereal thing, you don't know what's going on. It's grand, it's biblical in a way. Like, this is, if you, which you weren't obviously, like me, were so inspired by the movie, you ended up watching hours of like lore videos describing the lore of Iron Lung. That's like, because I left and I thought like, what a cool horror setting and story. I will agree it was long. Like, I think you could have shaved a half hour and this would have been a far more successful experience.
You shaved an hour and a half off this movie. Like, I'm not even exaggerating. This pushing 30 minutes was pushing what you could do in this movie, honestly.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. I also I thought, just to push back on the lore thing, I thought it was like kind of incomprehensible, and it was just like most like easy like eldritch horror, like Lovecraftian monster type imagery that you could go for. That to me is not really
like a
interesting.
fucking anglerfish, dude. I was like,
yeah.
I don't know.
Well, that's lore accurate to the video game, and that's actually what you're thinking of is the frog. The frog is what breaches the hull and kills him at the end of the game. And the dragon's actually a really big deal, and that's like the close up on the poster.
Sound like Ty on the Five Nights at Freddy's review.
I thought of this. I was like, if you guys aren't down for Iron Lung, I'll get Ty involved because I could be the hater to his lover. But I was like, truly, like, again, I still gave this movie like I think a 2 or 2.5. Like, I did get value out of it more than you guys did, because I did think it was mid, and I mean that respectfully because it was a bottle episode. There's many movies that we could name, but like think of like the movie Buried with Ryan Reynolds, where he's in a coffin the whole movie. This is kind of like that. And I was even going to do a bit where I dressed up and did the Markiplier fit for this to be like, this is the entire movie, is the POV streamer camera on the guy talking to himself, basically. But I do get it. Like, I saw this completely by myself on like a slow night after work, just to wait out traffic, and I did enjoy it because I am a sucker for like a good like creepypasta or horror story or lore, and this has that. But again, like you guys said, I don't disagree as far as it didn't really dive in or explore it that much, and I think the movie is the opportunity to expand on it. Like, it's basically the quiet rapture. Like, there's a bunch of this when they said it in the movie, I was like, oh, what's like, I want to know more about the quiet rapture. Like, I was really enjoying those beats and like those story elements, but they were, like you guys said, very background. Also, maybe it's because I am so wrinkly brain, 500 IQ'd. I immediately understood that the camera was an X-ray camera, you know, like I immediately assumed that because it's like you can't see through blood. And when he photographs stuff and you see skeletons, that added this fun creepy factor because I'm a smart person, was like, those could be real life things that are alive, but it's X-raying through the skin.
I was confused by that in the movie because I was like, how do you know it was a skeleton? Like, I was confused why they kept calling it a skeleton. They're like, oh, it's a skeleton, pick it up. I'm like, what? Like, I was just kind of confused by that, and I was like,
Well,
It's
that's why,
like, and they're
like,
like, oh, it moved. Well, the sea shifts or whatever. And I'm like, what the
yeah.
fuck is going on?
On the YouTuber pushback side thing too, it's like, yeah, if your demo is like 12-year-olds on YouTube, the reveal that it was an X-ray cannon and he just gave a guy like stage 5 cancer by X-raying him on the shipyard dock or whatever. And also, like, how convenient is it that that's supposed to be disabled, but for some reason it didn't, you know?
Yeah, where's
Yeah,
the
like
safety
there's
on that? Like, what?
yeah, the safety was on, but it failed for that one beat to work. You know, like narratively, yeah, it is a bit thin. But it did give me some excitement to look into like the lore of the game and like all the biblical ties, like in the Rapture in the Bible. There is like a blood ocean on the moon, and that's hinted at that. That's what this is like. So like, I think it got me more jazzed for the source material than anything. And again, Markiplier wasn't bad, and I would say like, again, to push back on the initial take of like Markiplier using his handle to market it, anything that gets butts and seats, I think, is a win. But I do kind of understand your point. Like, as far as it does seem a little bit of a downgrade. And my last thing to defend here, because I don't think it's worth taking up too much time, is yeah, Chris Stuckman's Shelby Oaks sucks so bad for me. I hated it so much. I will put Five Nights at Freddy's or this or like anything above that movie. Maybe it's my bias, but I do think a bottle episode, Black Mirror episode, basically, sci-fi with thinly veiled eldritch horror is going to take the cake compared to watching Shelby Oaks ever again. I don't think I would ever sit back through and watch this movie over again.
This is a movie that doesn't have like a genre. Like, this is other than boring. Like, this is like, it's a horror thing. Like, why? Because there's fucking blood in it. Like, there's not even a moment of tension or fear, and it wasn't even that. Like, they tried to do something scary and it didn't work for me. They don't even try to do anything scary. Like, it was baffling to me. At no point did I find any of this interesting or compelling or intriguing even. Like, and I remember I watched, because I edited the episode, so I watched back Adrienne and Ty's thing about Five Nights at Freddy's. And the thing that I find so frustrating with these movies is that they have lore books that are this fucking thick, and then they make a movie where it touches on 2 fucking pages of that.
Yeah.
And it just like doesn't explore that. And I understand like the confines of this, but I also want to point out my last bit on this, because I could do this a lot longer. This movie had a $3 million budget, which I know in the grand scheme, like compared to what gets made for $160 million, where the fuck did $3 million go? Because that blew my fucking mind when I was like, okay,
the
low
practical
budget.
blood, the sets, the VFX were all pretty solid. Like, the effects looked way better than I expected.
I'll just say, I was like I was getting ready to like apologize after a little bit or backtrack after Brandon's comment about like, oh, he funded it all himself, because I was like, okay, respect. But now that you say it was $3 million, I'm even more baffled. I'm like, dude threw all of his YouTube money into this and it still looks that bad. Like, where did that money go? I don't know. I just
I definitely thought like the ones like set of the submarine was okay. To be fair, what I would say is like, because it is a bottle episode of a movie, you know what I mean? Like, it's all confined. Cinematography wise, I thought was pretty good at like getting all these like gross close-ups and like really showing off like the aging and the degradation of the submarine. Like, there's a lot of small positives, and I will agree, like, it's not a phenomenal movie, but I did think, like, again, the challenge with a movie where it is like you're in one location the whole time trying to maintain the audience's interest. Like, there's one movie with like Jake Gyllenhaal where he's a 911 dispatcher, and it's just him in a call center the whole movie on Netflix, and I thought that sucked. Because how many close-ups on a coffee mug can you do? But you do close-up on the blood dripping down the walls, or the things flickering in and out.
They did that all 1,000 times. Yeah, like, they didn't do anything to me that was interesting. They're like, oh fuck, half the shots were out of focus too, which was driving me nuts. And I don't normally catch these kinds of things, but like again, to me it's not an excuse, and I don't know that you're trying to like paint it that way, but like to be like, well, but it's a bottle episode, it's a bottle movie. That's your confinement that you put on the movie for budgetary reasons or whatever else. But like, you need to be aware of this, and this is where I don't want to let this movie off the hook. Like, it is so fucking hard to make those kinds of movies good. and there are
Oh, yeah.
rare exceptions to that. And I promise you, like, if you're a first-time filmmaker, like, to make this 2 hours, like, I'm not the movie length complainer guy. I'm like, make your movie 3 hours if you think, dude, I will sit down and I will watch it. This was baffling. Like, there wasn't even 30 minutes to me would have been generous on what you could do with
Yeah.
this. And yeah, I just, like I said, I wish I really wanted to be behind this movie, like, so much, purely for, again, the story, its creation. And again, like, to me, the biggest thing here is putting butts in seats, getting individual distribution. It did not have a distributor, a major distributor. So it like has a lot that I wish I could be really enthusiastically celebrating here. But like it's distressing to me that basically the things that are pushing people to a movie is purely name recognition from someone they've watched for a long time. I can't say like make a good
Shelby
movie and
Oaks.
people will show up, make dog shit and people will show up. Like I like it, as much as I want to celebrate the win, like it's also not encouraging. Like I just, so what, it requires like a big name and you could just make crap and it'll still work. Like fuck, that's not
To
totally optimistic either.
One little nitpick too, like the flip side of your comment about like, oh, there's this much lore, but you're only including like this tiny like little sliver. The flip side of that for me was like, uh he's fucking in there saying dialogue like, oh, I'm in the red now, like out loud to himself alone. Come on, Simon. Like that shit drives me crazy. Like you're
Come on,
kind
Simon.
of dialogue for the sake of dialogue just to like exposit stuff kills me. Like if
Yeah.
Nick Cage can do a whole movie without saying a word and you understand his character, his motivation, all that, like we need to like set the bar a little higher. This, yeah. Anyway, that was my little
on
extra
that
little
note,
nitpick.
No, I get that. On that note, I feel like there's nothing I could say to up the conversation on Iron Lung. I found it mediocre, and you guys hated it, so that was a good proactive discussion. But when we talk about raising the bar, I want to talk about a movie that is the definition of mise en scène, which is phenomenal. And I would say this is one of my favorite movies of the year, and that is Wuthering Heights. I absolutely adored it. Jacob Elordi, Margot Robbie, best production design I've seen out of a movie this year to date. Yeah,
They sure
I
as
was,
shit use that fog machine.
oh boy, do they. I adored it. I like the snails in the movie, was leaving my own snail trail. Enjoyed it to death. Let's talk about Wuthering Heights.
I mean, I went into this day. We saw 4 movies on Friday. I went into the day optimistic about 3 for sure, and I only liked 1, and it was Crime 101 that we covered last week. I thought this movie was fine. I guess like the production design and costumes I did like. I liked the locations, and again, like there was a lot of shots that I thought were pretty solid. I will also say I didn't even know this was a book. Like I didn't know anything up until like a week before it came out. So I don't care about faithful adaptation. And even outside of that, I typically don't care about whether it's a good adaptation. If you're adapting source material, I care if it's a good movie. As a movie, I found myself kind of frustrated about it in the same way I'm frustrated about a lot of these like heavy-handed romance beats where it's like to something like Adrian and I were talking a little about this divide for the women that really like this kind of stuff, and to me it was like a social experiment almost. I was enjoying watching reactions to things, but as this movie goes and people are crying at the end and at other beats, like I was giggling like a child.
This guy
I
right
thought
here.
this was like super stupid, like in an eye roll kind of like, if this is this romance to people. To counter that, like it does have like, I believe, the tension and the kind of like horny energy. I'm joining the hype. I know there's always the this is probably going to be Brandon's critique, and I'm surprised you like it as our senior nudity correspondent. this movie was a cowardly little amount of that. I thought, especially in the, like, again, we talk about marketing, like, I didn't know anything about the movie. Like, I didn't know anything, and they're really selling this as a romantic bit, and like, okay. And I just didn't really like, it didn't impress on me really any of that. I was basically in the camp of like, well, it's funny watching two hot people be hot for each other, I guess. But like, yeah, I just was like, okay, sure. Like, I really didn't care strongly either way outside of those kinds of like the set and the design stuff. I will say the editing, I thought like, and these are things, like, I say this as a guy, I know Brandon likes to level the Redditor accusation against me, but these are typical details that I don't normally notice. But like, there's scenes where like Jacob Elordi is talking, and every other scene his height seems to be shifting, and I'm like thrown off by this. So there was a lot of sloppiness to this movie as well, and not the kind of sloppiness I guess I was expecting or hoping to see.
Yeah. Um, yeah,
I really want to hear from Brandon. I want to know why you loved this so much.
Oh, for so many reasons. So like, I started off by saying like the definition of mise en scène. When you go to film school, there, at least for me, there is like a whole exercise around this. So the definition of mise en scène is like everything you see in the shot to establish or evoke the emotion that you're going for. Like that's everything from the set design to the costume to the blocking of the actors to the actual size of the frame itself. Is it close? Is it wide? I felt like every wide shot in this movie ate. Every close up was intimate. I felt so connected and dialed in, and the visual language of the movie. And sure, it's like the romance is like as deep as a kiddie pool, but the human emotion in it and the yearning and longing I felt was so well translated. The director of the movie is getting kind of some backlash for not making it as faithful to the book, which I don't read. I'm much like Jacob Elordi. I really bought into his character being an illiterate 6'7" dude. Peak cast for me, anyways. But you know, it was just like her adaptation and her reasoning behind it was like, I read the book in high school and really liked it, and I wanted to adapt it now that she's like a big director. But she went off memory, like what she remembered from the book and what stuck out. And I find that fascinating because it's like, screw the nerds that want a faithful 9-hour adaptation. The director even said, like, if I had a 10-episode miniseries or whatever, I would have done the book. But to get a poignant, like 2-hour movie out there that had the best parts of it, I fully agree that was the right way to do it. For me, seeing just, again, like Shay said, two hot people, some of the criticisms, like, it's like watching two popular hot high schoolers have a romance. It's like, whatever. I didn't get that vibe. I was so bought in to kind of like his character transformation. I loved his gold tooth thing. That got me hyped to see his villain arc, you know, when he comes back and he's like,
his cunty little earring.
yeah, I love that. And like the fact that like he has this, again, I call it the villain arc, but he's even talking to like the sister or like the other ward lady or whatever, being like, I'll never love you, and I'm only going to get with you to make her upset. And he's like rizzing her sexually to get her to do what he wants. He's like, she calls him this. She's like, you're a vampire. And I was like, I was so bought in on him being like the antagonist now, because it's so deserved. This is a character that's never been loved. He was abandoned and taken in out of a bet, basically, by the alcoholic father. Alcoholic father, phenomenal character. I love the way they aged him. They made him gross. The book's more about generational trauma because of that guy, and I didn't need 9-episode chapters about that. I'm glad they did what they did with him. There's one line where it's like, you're sick and you make everybody in the house sick, and that's all I needed because it was obvious. And I think that's a strong filmmaking thing.
Well, to push back on that a little, I feel like I would have liked it more if they had leaned even more into that. But then they kind of go there, but then they just play the rest of the romance very straight. Like, oh, he actually does love her, and their love is worth sort of glorifying.
No, it's
but
super
yeah,
toxic.
sorry. I mean, I'll let you finish before I.
Yeah. I think like the toxic elements of like a toxic love, you know, and the fact that, again, like Jacob Elordi's character is never shown love either from parents or from even you know, Margot Robbie's character, Catherine. She treats him like a pet. She treats him like a dog or a slave through their upbringing, and he's conditioned to that. I think there's a subtle detail in that scene when he literally is chained up the other woman like a dog.
That's not true, though. Like, at least in this movie, like, that wasn't the case. Like, to say he was never loved, I'm like, there's the whole scene where she's like feeling bad. Like, yeah, he sacrifices himself, but like this is kind of what I felt like a disconnect in the movie was like how the dad throws that line at her, like, you treated him like your pet and whatever. I'm like, okay, she said
You
like
didn't
mean
see
shit
that.
to him like one time, and then otherwise like they were like, he covered for her, she covered for him. They clearly were like, that was a real relationship. So like, I don't know, like I thought that like that's
Nah,
one
it
part
was
of it that I
hella
think I
relatable
didn't.
because he gets his heart broken one time, never gets over it, and then he becomes a dog. Like he's treated like a dog and acts like a dog, and he makes her act like a dog. And the one scene where she pushes back on him, the secondary woman is like, "Why don't you write the letter?" Reminding us that he never learned to read. And he's like, that's how his love language is essentially being kind of like negged and shit on and treated poorly. His sense of self-worth is so gone and never established that he becomes a villain in the movie. He becomes Frankenstein's monsters of romance. And again, like I was getting that from it. It helped me stay bought in. So, again, I'm not sure if I'm reading between the lines too heavily, but I definitely felt like there were elements there that really lined up well. And again, the juxtaposition of like these two characters that are like star-crossed lovers or whatever, I didn't think I was going to like it or buy in. But the longer it went on, the more I enjoyed it. And even at the end, when Margot Robbie, spoiler alert, when Margot Robbie dies, she basically, this is the closest you could ever come to dying from a broken heart. She never gets his letters and she dies from the sepsis or whatever. And there's so many, like, I haven't even got to like what I actually liked about the movie. I'm so lost talking about the characters I thought were like serviceably passable. But what I actually loved, again, the sets and the design were so bombastic and phenomenal. The skin room, a skin room is an actual term for like a small closet people used to sleep in. And production design wise, they made a skin room. It was her skin as like tapestry. And that was so awesome. And when she dies, the room, I don't know if it was lighting or an actual redress of it, but the room itself, this flesh color gets pale and the veins are more apparent. And it's like, just on like a design production standpoint alone, which I know you guys briefly were like, oh, that was good, but I hated the rest of it. On
Well,
that
I didn't even
alone,
get to
it
talk
bought
about
it
the
in.
movie yet, so obviously.
All right, well,
but,
tell me, what did you think? I definitely have been rambling way too long.
well, I mean, I think it's interesting that you like your defense of the characters it like comes off almost as like someone who's read the book, because like to me that's sort of what the book does, but then I didn't get that from the movie. Like I didn't really get all of the complexities that the toxicity, all of that, like the way the mistreatment of the character. But anyway, I, as someone who has read the book many years ago, um I just to kind of briefly cover that side of it, I also am like not one of those people who needs an adaptation to like be one-to-one with a book. I think they're different mediums. They should be doing different things. But what really unlocked this movie, like, and made it make sense to me was when I read that Emerald Fennell was like made this to sort of appease the 14-year-old version of herself that read this and loved it. Because to me, it felt like a 14-year-old's interpretation of the book.
That's why I loved it
And
so much. I'm a 14-year-old girl at heart.
I don't think, like I said, I think creative liberties are great, but at a certain point it becomes, well, like, why did you pick this vehicle to tell this story if you're just gonna sort of almost willfully misread it? And I liked a lot of the things that you hit on, Brandon. Like the production design I thought was fantastic. The cinematography was great. The costumes, beautiful. All of that stuff really worked for me, and I was like here for it. But overall I just felt kind of bored. Like it was more boring than I was expecting. And to Shay's point about the lack of like horniness, I was expecting it to be way more horny and provocative, because that's sort of Emerald Fennell's thing. Like she just like leans into that, and people either love it or hate it. So she's, to me, this was like probably my least favorite of her movies, which I've felt kind of mixed on all of them. I find her a very frustrating filmmaker because she clearly has such a great grasp of the visual and the design elements of a movie, the mise-en-scène, as you said. Like she just understands that way better than like a lot of other people working today. Like she knows what she's doing on that level. And there's a lot of shots in here that I found really striking and yeah, stunning. But the rest of it just like didn't hold together. I think I didn't buy the romance, whether it was a toxic kind of one or whether it was trying to play into the Romeo and Juliet star-crossed lovers thing. I just didn't really buy it, despite Jacob Elordi and Margot Robbie like doing their absolute best to sell it. And the highlight for me was honestly the sister played by Alison Oliver. I thought she just like killed it. It was so funny.
She was the like comic relief character, I think.
Yeah. Well, in a morbid way, I guess too. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I think the one thing I want to level to about the horniness aspect is also the movie sets this up with that opening scene, and I felt like it never, like we've talked a lot about, I feel like, of movies that open in a particular way and then sort of like never match the promise or maybe struggle to do as well. And this was like where they're hanging the guy and like they're like people are commenting on the dead body having a boner and like people are touching themselves. Like it very much went for this kind of like wild swing. And then like you don't even see cheek in this movie, bro. Like I was baffled by that. And I thought like it was kind of like a weird half commitment. And I think that's also sort of my overall critique about basically everything in this movie is that from like a narrative, like you're talking about when you talk about Jacob Elordi becoming this heel and like embracing this monster character and that's true for the back half of the movie, but it is unearned from what happens in the first half. Like he is not treated in a way to me that justifies kind of this or even explains this sort of like pivot at the end. And I understand, like, again, like to me where I find this like this the whole like romance, if you want to call it that, of this beat of like it felt disjointed. And like when he comes back and there's that scene, and again, this was one of probably the highlight of my viewing experience, when she sits on her bed and sits on the eggs, and there's a bunch of people in our theater that went like, oh my God,
there's a lot of that.
And I was like, I was rolling my eyes giggling because I'm like, okay, they meet, and then immediately there was this disjointed like tension that I thought was super weird and out of place. Like, tell us, where are you? And he's like shooting her fuck me eyes and everything. And then like they immediately build this conflict that just felt artificial to me. Like it just didn't make sense. And then they have the ebbs and flows, and their romance and their passion is high. And then she all of a sudden was like, no, we're breaking it off. I can't do this anymore. And then so he immediately jumps in with the sister, and then that unfolds this kind of death beat at the end that I'm just like, I don't care or believe or buy in. Like I was baffled, genuinely baffled, listening as that climax of the movie's happening, and he's laying there and they're cutting back to when they're kids and shit, at the amount of sniffling going on. And I was like, I don't even think this is like a guy problem. Like evidently it's not, because you had a completely different experience to it than I did, Brandon. But like I was baffled that there was any emotion in any of this, because I did not get any emotion really coming. Like the most sympathetic and the most emotion I found was when they were kids, particularly with the dad and this abuse angle and this mistreatment. And like, that was the only part of the story that I ever felt anything at all, even remotely touching on a feeling, other than like kind of like whatever. And I guess I'm just really unsympathetic to like, I'm one of those people that I rag on movies that cram in like we have to have a relationship to make characters relatable or whatever, and so they have this kind of forced romance beat. Obviously this is the point of that movie, but I just like, I was like, I don't believe it. And it's not, I don't believe, I don't understand. And it's stupidly frustrating to the point where I'm like, you know, this all ends like in like Romeo and Juliet. They make their own comparison when they talk about it in this movie. And like to a degree, I can understand that works a lot better, because it's like a missed like a missed messaging thing. Like their feelings were never in doubt, and the tragedy of that movie is one of like a miscommunication, where this is just stupid people making stupid decisions, and then it drives them to death, and a potential implied suicide or life of misery that he leaves after this. I'm like, okay, like I just it did nothing for me, so I was just kind of mid through the whole thing, I guess.
To like quickly kind of touch on that too is like I was actually really excited to hear Adriana's point on this because her and I lined up so much on Frankenstein, and there's some similar beats of like set wise and the Jacob Elordi of it all, sure. But on that note of like stupid characters or whatever, this was a minor disagreement because again I'm really bought in. But my girlfriend and I were talking about that aspect where it was like I'm not sure if like the term was her ward. It was the like the girl who's her paid friend or whatever. She's the one that ultimately kind of betrays her by not giving the letters and kind of informing her husband. And also, I'll just say her husband's like the biggest cuck in this movie. Like he clearly sees them making out in the rain outside that window. Clearly, like I had the most tense feeling when like she's like, "You must go," and they keep making out. Then eventually he comes outside. He's like, "Come in, you're gonna get cold." I like the cold. Our son might not. Like that whole scene, I was like, he's definitely wise to this. The maid told him. He definitely saw them through that window. In the end, when she dies, he comes to her bedside and he's like, "I'm so sorry." And he's like, "Don't touch me." Like it's like he's so background supportive of this. He definitely knows there's like beyond knows. He's almost supporting it by not just outright like sending her to the gallows, which I expected to tie in that horniness at the start. But the scene with her ward who's not passing on the notes, I think like, and that is what I was getting out with the Adriana thing here. You and I agree in Frankenstein, there's so many line deliveries or like one-off lines that just like hit so hard. In this movie, there's like the one that I've seen a lot of clips of where it's like, "Kiss us now and let's both be damned," like that old school romance novel type stuff. But one of the favorite lines in the movie from the whole audience was that scene where, Catherine's like, "You just love to make me cry." And then she dead ass looks at her and goes, "Not as much, not only half as much as you like to cry yourself," like that she's a huge brat and like she stayed a huge brat the whole time. And I thought that was like kind of fascinating. So I don't know, like I think a lot of the lines really like worked for me and they fleshed out like the characters. As far as yeah, she sucks. Like she's a brat. And again, speaking of brat, like the Charlie XCX score of this, I thought hit pretty hard, having that contemporary thing going on. Sort of like how Bridgerton's like about that like, old school romance, where they use modern pop songs. Like, not a Bridgerton fan or anything, but I really did kind of like all the pieces. And like Adriana was saying, was like, yeah, the understanding of every scene, like in it, the mise en scène, and like the scene when she falls over the wall and he opens the gate and she's sitting there like a fairy tale laid out in her dress, waiting for him to be noticed. Huge crowd reaction and laugh. And again, it's like a great individual shot almost every time delivering the end or start of a scene. And I just, I popped for that. And
yeah, I liked the score too. Shout out to Charlie XCX. I think it was interesting. It was just interesting. Although on that note, part of that aspect of it, like a kind of more contemporary score with like a period piece, just reminded me of Marie Antoinette. And that I think is just such a better movie and does kind of this I don't know, it does like a sort of revisionist history thing a lot better. Very different movies, but still, I couldn't help, again, like flashing back to that movie and comparing this one like a bit negatively to it. Like I just think that movie's so tight and like so good, and yeah, I don't know where I was going with that. I think ultimately just like not all the parts of this worked for me. Like the worst thing I think I could have felt going into this was like bored and that it dragged a little. And I did feel that at parts when going in, I was like, oh, this is surely the one movie today where I won't feel bored. Yeah. Like whether I love it or hate it, I'll feel strongly about it. And then it just like kind of like didn't quite hit that mark for me. So yeah, maybe it's just an expectation thing, that we talk about the E word a lot, but I don't know.
To super quickly touch on that, because I do think it's important. There's been a lot of cross marketing for this movie to like hype it up as like the most like intense, passionate thing. There's a Doritos marketing campaign where it's like, "Let's get naked with Wuthering Heights." and it's like naked chips and stuff. There's an IKEA like ad I saw, and again, it's like a rug to crawl across because there's so much freaky crawling on the floor stuff in this movie. But like, there's a ton of marketing crossing over to externally hype the movie up as well. So like, I don't blame you. Like, this was sold to me as not a good story, but incredibly like, wow, passionate on screen. So I can get that. And also, I do agree, if I saw 4 movies in a day, I might come down differently on this one. But seeing it half tipsy with my girlfriend on Valentine's Day, I was like, peak cinema, you know, horny rom-com, sorry, not rom-coms, but horny period pieces are back. But again, like you said about Marie Antoinette, I guess that's a really apt comparison, because I don't think it's the same quality, but I just think the intensity of some of the visuals won me over in the state I was in, which I would admit I definitely didn't see the sober. You know, like Jeremy Johns is like, good time, no alcohol required. I had a great time, but alcohol was involved. So if I'm being transparent, that could be half my buy-in.
I think one thing that I wish just one little moment that I kind of wish the movie sort of distilled the best parts of the movie that I wish it would have like taken further was like when he grabs her by the corset and like lifts her up. That to me was like, that should have been the movie in microcosm, like made bigger, but it just like it had that moment, but then there were high points, but the rest of it just like Anyway, you were saying, Cher.
The music thing I wanted to talk about, because I actually find this disconnect when I see these in movies where they're period pieces but with contemporary music that pulls me out of an immersive experience and puts me in more of an observational one, which like I approached this movie with, because like, again, I was more kind of excited from a sociological perspective to see people react to this movie than I was to necessarily experience it. But I first noticed this in The Great Gatsby that came out, you know, eons ago now in our timeline.
Lana Del Rey,
Baz Luhrmann, and yeah. And particularly like where if with like the music they would be listening to at that party, if they played period accurate music, would not convey to modern audiences the sense of feeling that it was basically trying to convey. And I understand why they do it, but there's been multiple kind of examples of this over time now that I've seen since then, and I find that it distracts me. Like I can't buy in, and this could just totally be me, but like it feels like a disconnect that breaks my immersion. So even if there was a possibility of me like really to get into this movie and on its wavelength, I feel these music choices, like the score was good and the music was like, you know, fine, like it worked for it, but it just also kind of contributed, I think, to this idea where I was sitting back and like watching an experience or something like that, as opposed to really getting into a movie. That could just be totally me, but
did you feel that way with Marty Supreme? Because that's also like an anachronistic soundtrack.
Yeah, I think for that one, I think it was a bit, the moments that the music hit, I felt like kind of lended more to the beat. So like having like the Forever Young transition into the credits, like it feels disconnected because I'm watching sperm cells go to an egg. So like it wasn't coming at these sort of critical emotional beats as much. And maybe that like, and I guess for me, it's really kind of experiential, because like when I hear something like that and I feel like I'm looking at something so contemporary and the vibe I'm getting is this sort of modern club energy, I guess that just throws me. So it's not like always the case, but I think it depends on the situation. And like, again, like Gatsby's one I always think of, because to me it's the most jarring of like these, again, not only period, you know, related, but period related Baz Luhrmann versions of like this kind of era. So it kind of dials it up more. And I think like, yeah, I wanted to, like, I was really ready to really have a lot of fun and enjoy this movie. And I don't understand why certain choices were made, particularly on the kind of nudity bit, because honestly, I wondered, like, all I remember about Saltburn is the discussion really about the ending and like, oh, how crazy that
Having
final
sex with the
sequence
grave.
was. And I'm like, I wondered if they're like, okay, we're just gonna, I didn't like that overshadowed everything else or something. Like, I don't know what the decision making nitpicking there was, but I just felt like, yeah, like in a movie that had so much going for it, the fact that I ultimately felt, like you said, kind of indifferent and so little, I think, is kind of what disappointed me the most, because I would have liked this even if I'm like, oh, that was so stupid, but they swung and they went for it. I could buy into that a little bit more, but it felt like a case of like have its cake and eat it too, and it just didn't really, work for me.
To touch on all of what was just said, speaking of like period piece and music, my biggest example and greatest hit version of that is 2004's A Knight's Tale. It's medieval times, and yeah,
Yes.
you know exactly
One of my
the opening
favorite
scene.
movies.
Yeah, like they're like they showed the court jesters playing the song, like actually playing the Queen song, "We Will Rock You," and it's like that's peak.
The crowd
So
is
for
like
me,
clapping.
yeah, they're clapping because in my head I was like, oh, is this like again playing us the audience a song? And then no, it's diegetic, like they're actually playing that in the movie, and I thought that ripped. So for me again, like I fall on the side where it's like. Kind of what I said about Iron Lung, anything to get butts in seats. If a Charlie XCX song and this hot cast and that it's inaccurate to the book is going to sell tickets to get people to go see a bunch of movies, I'm bought in, and I think that's really important because, like again, the study is showing like the fourth quarter of Cineplex is down tremendously from last year. Like people are not seeing movies as much as they used to, and that's like a constant that we all know of. But I think if this is going to be a successful movie, be it whatever, not as engaging as people want it to be, even as the minority here who did feel like it connected on every level, I do think that's a good way to do it. Get a soundtrack that has hype, get actors that have hype, cut all the stuff from the book that didn't fit in the movie. Sure. So yeah, I totally
Well,
get
but
the
hold on,
disconnect.
I want to dig into that because I think actually that ultimately will lead to a greater downfall, that kind of mentality about these are flashes in the pan as opposed to a sustainable solution. Like if you want people to go to the movies, then you need to make good movies that compel people to go to the movies. You can do things like marketing gimmicks, like tying Charlie XCX to the soundtrack as a way to entice people to go. And it's not like this is like, I think Iron Lung is a much worse example of this, but like if you're just using gimmicks, like anything to put butts in the seats, like sure, that might be a flash in the pan jump in here, but if you keep doing that, people are not going to go. If the next Markiplier movie also kind of sucks, I would expect it to perform worse than this one did financially. And I think that's kind of a result. So I understand the idea, like you need to do things, but like find ways to bake them in kind of more organically. And I think like you using the Knight's Tale example to me is a great one, because to me that like it adds something, and it's literally baked into the atmosphere of the movie. And where I think like this isn't just a me problem in this specific case with Wuthering Heights is that people were like giggling when like songs would hit in this movie, like the crowd that we were watching, like it became like an option. That's that Charlie XCX bit. And I think that it like a consequence of that is it takes you out of the movie, and even if it's the reason that kind of brought you there. But I just think from a sustainability perspective, like we can't lose sight of like you can do that, but try and like really ingrain it and make it work for the movie you're making, because yeah, it might give you a temporary relief, but if you want long-term sustainability at the theater, you need to make
I
good
mean,
movies that compel people to go leave home to go watch them.
I kind of disagree in this case. Like, I do think it works for the movie it's in. And, like, it wasn't just this, like, maybe songs that made people giggle. Like, when we first see Jacob Elordi after his glow up, a bunch of people kind of, like,
Oh yeah,
lost their shit. We
yeah.
see his, like,
And
little
the smoke,
tooth and his...
and like again,
Yeah, and just,
the smoke
you
machine
know,
was
and the...
working overtime, dude. That thing was
A
peppering.
lot of the costumes and stuff are so, like, over the top and, like, I'm gonna guess
Almost a gag.
anachronistic.
Yeah.
I'm not like super up on whatever, but there's no way Margot Robbie's cunty little sunglasses are like something that Emily Bronte was wearing. So it all kind of fits. I think it's all part of the aesthetic of the movie. It just, yeah, for me that was never an issue. It was more just like the execution and like the sort of the story fell flat, and I'm not even one of those like book people who's like this is so far but it just like it felt like it was lacking the complexity that it could have had, and that's sort of where I get tripped up, and I didn't feel it as much. So
Yeah, I definitely felt like I forgot it was a Charlie XCX thing, and it was only after the movie when I was trying to post an Instagram story where I was like trying to find Wuthering Heights music. I'm like, oh, she has a whole album for the movie. So I do see your point on like a flash in the pan shortcut to like get butts and seats, but I thought it did work well for the movie, and like that opening scene where it's got that like horny music blasting that felt like kind of like atmospheric. That was Charlie XCX, and then kind of like counterpoint. I do agree and see your point, but I do think like a movie hiring a contemporary artist, even if it like, because again, let's say this is like Crime 101, and let's say they got, I don't know, ASAP Rocky to do a whole album for it. Just movie studios funding modern artists to get original music, I think is going to be far better than like when we saw Hamnet. They used that really great piece of music that fit the scene perfectly. But you and I, like, I was like, what is that? And you figured it out. You're like, that's whatever overture from Arrival. And it's like, what a phenomenal piece.
Well, that's been used so often at this point.
Everywhere.
And
like,
memed. The memes killed that.
Memed.
For
yeah.
sure.
So it's like, I'm really glad they didn't end up having the same kind of cardinal sin where it's like, here's a big emotional moment where this music absolutely works, but it's overused. They're like, no, let's get a whole album from Charlie XCX. And yeah, sure, to sell the teen girlies, I want to go for that. But I thought the music fit. Like, and again, in the same way with A Knight's Tale, they never work it in like there's somebody playing there with like a bass drum and 808s,
right.
you know, on their laptop in medieval times. But I did think it fit pretty well. It wasn't as tongue in cheek as Knight's Tale, and it wasn't as distracting as like Lana Del Rey playing during a ballroom scene in Great Gatsby. But yeah, I'd say it's somewhere
I just
in
wanted,
between that
like,
spectrum.
honestly, I wanted a little more. Like, I guess maybe that was like, I felt like maybe it didn't, like, it tried to be too almost ambient instead of present. Like, because again, like, this movie did, as much as it didn't like hit it all the time, it did have a dialed up energy. It was exaggerated, and I almost could have used more of it to just kind of keep me going. I don't think the problem was that there was like too much. I think with the choices and made and the kind of movie it was, I could have like not maybe had like Charlie XCX playing weird instruments or something in
or
the
a
actual
cameo
movie
at the gallows
itself,
or something.
but like
yeah,
like I thought you could have, like, to me it's like, and again, like depending on what the movie wants to do, are you trying to make me feel a certain emotion, which is I think the Hamnet case, where it's like we really want to dial in this kind of emotional component, or do you want me to have sort of that giddy excitement that contributing, where I think this movie's energy was definitely more in that camp. So if anything, like, yeah, I could have used lean into that and be that kind of thing even more. So, but Brandon, I want to give you the closing word on the movie, because you were once again the 2-on-1 victim here a little bit. And yeah, no, like I said, I'm indifferent. If you're intrigued, like a friend of the show, Brittany, reached out and we were talking a little bit about it, and she said she had a great time with it and really liked it. And so I think if you're curious, I think it's definitely worth the risk to go out and see. I think it's like I've seen a lot of various reactions, and I'm always much more intrigued by a movie that's drawing a range of feelings out of people than one that's just kind of like, well, it was like universally flat. So I think it's definitely worth going out to see. And yeah, like I said, I expect it to be in the zeitgeist for at least a little bit here. We'll see what kind of legs it has. But
being in the zeitgeist, great way to put it. I hope they teach this in film schools for mise en scène, and they really dial that in. Because yeah, if nothing else, I think this movie has immaculate aura. Every shot is serving. It is phenomenal. And again, like Adriana said about like the director being like trying to appease her 14-year-old high school self who read the book. I love that so many people want to go see it and are connecting with it. I hope it has legs. Because like when I went to go see this, there was 100 people in the Cineplex lobby getting concessions at least. I texted you being like, the Forum couldn't handle this in Montreal. Like the amount of people flocking there on Valentine's Day opening weekend really tugged at my heartstrings, knowing how down bad Cineplex is financially. So
what did you see this in, by the way? We saw this in IMAX.
Yeah, so I technically love this movie so much I paid to see it twice. I only saw it once.
Oh yeah.
classic girlfriend shenanigans. We wanted to go do a Valentine's date before the movie, and it was like what normally is like a 30-minute wait was 2 hours, so we missed our first screening. But I went to this older Cineplex in downtown that they do it's like a VIP. They have a 70 millimeter projector there, but it's like an old theater. It's not super peak because they didn't have an IMAX option at this one downtown. But I saw this in a like 20-person theater in the very front row at a VIP. So like I was actually kind of craning my neck up. I thought I wasn't gonna like it because of
Brandon
my
was
physical discomfort.
immersed.
Oh
I
yeah.
was, yeah, dude. When we talk about having that 4D
Talking about
experience, where
intimacy.
Yeah, exactly. And like we were talking about, it's like the scenes that, as we were saying, like there was a lot of audible giggling because there's so much sexual weirdness, like not necessarily from the score but just from moments, like the scene where she pleasures herself and then stuffs the grass in his mouth. He spits the grass out and licks her fingers, saying how he loves the taste and follow her like a dog to the end of the world. And then the follow-up scene starts with a macro shot on a literal snail trail. Like the movie knew what it was doing. And I think, like Adriana said, about like her other films, I've only really seen Saltburn. And Saltburn, I liked a lot for the over-the-top horniness, and then I didn't like a lot because for other reasons, being like I was a bit mixed. This one, I wasn't mixed at all because I very immediately was like, oh, this is a freak off. I like it. I didn't need the nudity here because it was all the moments in between, like to show two naked bodies or to again lick those fingers and say I like the taste and I'm a dog now that'll follow you in the earth. I was like, oh, this is like a smut book on screen, and it was getting me cranked up. Also, on topic of being wet, it's a very wet movie.
Good
like
Lord.
like Jacob Elordi is dripping wet for like 50% of his on-screen time, like soaked in the rain passionately. Like it is that trope from like The Notebook of two characters in the rain making out times 11. So better or worse, like I'm not saying that's like it means it's perfect, but like there was just so much atmosphere and aura, and this movie was literally dripping with it at certain points. So I have a glowing review, and I know it's not gonna land for everybody. And the majority of people, I think it's like a 68 on Rotten Tomatoes, because a lot of people are like, yeah, it looks great, but what were we watching for 2 hours? But for me, I got a lot of value out of it. And I'm glad Adriana read the book at least, because I was just talking completely out of my ass. I'm like, cut the book, just get straight to the hardcore longing and desperation. So
No, I mean, they did cut like a lot out, but that's fine. I feel like this book has been adapted like fucking 20 times. Like there's a lot of adaptations.
I love that I had no idea that this was a fucking book.
And a lot of those like cut out the like whole second half, which is like the next generation and dealing with all the generational trauma stuff that you alluded to. But I don't know. I thought the movie was like had some positives and high points, but also like fell short in other ways. I will just say, like, the amount of like young women sobbing at the end of our screening was a little concerning, because like this is not supposed to be like a swooning romance, and like leaning into that just kind of
like right in front of us, that girl was fucking, she wasn't sobbing, she was fucking crying, dude.
Oh,
and
yeah,
like we're in the credits,
speaking
the
of
lights are up,
wetness, like
she was still going. And I texted Ashley and I was like, baby, we really are going to have to make sure this relationship works, because if this is how people feel about what I just watched, we're all cooked, okay? There is no such thing. It's miserable. Like I was baffled. Like I said, as a social experiment, I thought that was super funny to watch, but I was like, I felt bad because I didn't want the girl to see me pointing at her. I was like, holy fuck, dude, this girl's bawling her eyes out. Like I was freaking out laughing at that. I couldn't shake it.
I did really want to get your take on it, because like in other romance movies, you've pointed out like, oh, the characters like aliens to me. I don't understand their logic. Meanwhile, I'm like, oh, a toxic relationship is the most understandable thing to me. But like on that note, I had that like takeaway gag of like, this is sort of like The Notebook as well, where the main character has to choose between two dreamboat men, one who's financially stable, gives her everything she's ever wanted, and one that just like she's in love with for seemingly no reason other than like trauma, I guess. But I took away from this as like, men, be careful out there. Your woman will always cheat on you with a 6'7", unemployed, illiterate man with a violent past. Because
as long as he looks like
Jacob
Elordi.
That's it. It's like if you're Jacob Elordi and
If
you're
he
missing
can
teeth
lift
and you're
you up
illiterate.
with one hand, yeah.
Yeah. I wish they showed a wide shot because I did think like nitpick wise that was kind of cheating because I thought he pulled her in, but she's like put me down.
Too.
Yeah, I wish they showed him Frankenstein up in the air.
Is he like I was thrown because I'm
the
with
height
you
thing
there.
that you talked about that would have
better.
sold me. Yeah, because he pulls her in. I thought he just pulled her in, but she's like put me down.
Yeah.
And they do that. Anyways, minor nitpick for the tail end. But do you guys have any crazy theater experiences other than people sobbing at what I agree with?
I was just gonna say, like, I couldn't believe this. This is not something that happened in Wuthering Heights, so I can at least say that. But this was in our. We had Crime 101 and then Good Luck, Have Fun, Don't Die, which, yes, I had to look at my notes to remember the name of again because I did not love that movie. But back to back, if you're that tired, get an energy drink, get a coffee. If you're a theater sleeper, for the love of God, please don't go to the movie. If you're falling asleep, just leave. I'm not a big walkout guy, but you're snoring incredibly loud in the theater, just leave. And if you're confronted, if you happen to fall asleep, you're there by yourself, you fall asleep, someone wakes you up, don't jump up with the punch ready to throw hands or deny that you were sleeping and snoring when it's so fucking obvious that you were sleeping and snoring. Guys, the theater is a place to enjoy movies, not to sleep. Thank you very much.